it's going to be super validating and contextualizes all the work that we've been doing for the last year. I'll show you this. Well, should I show them now or should I show them later? Okay. So I don't know if you can see this at all. Can you see
Yep,
that?
I can.
So we started the whole conversation framing around the assumptions that we were working from. So the assumptions were that we trade on trust, and that when there's a gap in trust, humans make up incomplete stories to fill those gaps. And whenever that happens, you create real deep problems. And that we've oriented our entire culture initiative around gap hunting. We're looking to figure out where the gaps are because we're not surprised by them. In fact, it's good news when you find them, because then you can do something about it. And the goal is to basically ask you a series of questions. What was it about that whole thing that was interesting to you, like enough to get closer to it and invite us in? And then what have been surprises over the course of the last year of working together, installing these things? What have been wins? What have been learnings?
I mean, what I would say is, this isn't for everybody, but if you want to build a world-class organization that has performance right at the center, then you need to call Dane.
This whole series is made possible thanks to our friends at Bill and Vermont. When we made this series, we realized there's no way you can take my word for truth here. You got to hear from actual founders, people who actually do this every single day. So we're going to have two conversations. This is the first of those two. This one's with an actual client of CTC. They're called Heart and Soil. My guy, Dean Brennan, is going to come on here and share his actual experience, his real experience with taking our culture initiatives and installing them in his organization and the results that came from it.
I'm Dane Sanders, VP of Employee Development and Performance at CTC. Dean Brennan, CEO at Heart and Soil out in Austin, crushing it in business. You have an amazing team. You have an amazing compound where you do your work. I've been out there a number of times. The cold plunges never get old. The workouts, the vibe, the carnivore eating, like the barbecues at lunch alone, incredible. But Dean, we're not talking about any of that stuff today. We're talking about your choice a year ago to take really a hard look at the tools and systems that we have at Common Thread, a partner agency of yours, and to actually start installing them into your actual organization, which is a massive vote of trust. But I just want to get curious up front, like what was it? Talk about that event when you first heard about what we do here and your experience that was interesting enough for you to get curious and scratch under the surface.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, that's such a deep question because I don't know if there was like one particular thing. When I think back to it, I think constantly throughout business, when you're building a business and growing a business, you're constantly on this journey of like trying to figure things out. You're trying to get clarity where clarity doesn't really exist. And I was kind of on this journey where, our company had reached a certain size and scale in terms of employees and revenue and complexity. And I was having trouble myself understanding exactly what I wanted to get out of people. And that might not be the way of saying it, but
no, it's the honest way to say it.
How much we wanted to get out of the performance of people down to the channel level. And I realized at some point in that process that I'm part of the issue here. We were kind of like coming up on these, we're kind of hitting these walls in performance where for so long things were going so well. And then it was going so well until it wasn't. And when it wasn't, because we had a lot of organic momentum, it was very difficult to figure out, well, what's working, what's not. And that's the point where I realized myself and our leadership team, we couldn't clearly articulate what the expectation was for a channel or what the expectation was in terms of the value creation of an employee in a certain role. And we had these kind of like really high level things that we always talked about. We were always like, well, we're courageous and we're purposeful and we're loving. Our values, and which I think, are great. And they worked for us for a long time, but they weren't specific enough to where we were not quite having the conversation as a team about like, well, what does it mean to be courageous? And in this particular moment of facing some adversity, we found out some folks on the team really couldn't handle the pressure. Some people could. And anyway, so that's a long way of saying that I was trying to find clarity for myself and figure out like, how do I create a better system? Because you said one thing early on that was really striking to me. It's easy as a leader to kind of look at your team or look at individuals on your team as the problem when things aren't going well. But what you said is the results you're getting are essentially the system you've created.
That's right.
And so I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm getting results that I don't desire. Why is that?
So it's not like if something was actually broken. It was actually that the thing
Yes.
gave you exactly what it was designed for.
Exactly. And then when I dove into those values and started thinking about them, I'm like, you know what? There's a lot of actions and things that I've said on a day-to-day basis with the team on a weekly basis that I can see how we got that way. I can see how we got a little soft, when the pressure knob was turned up. I could just see all the issues. So long story short, that was kind of the moment I was in when I, went to the CTC summit and heard you talk about how CTC is operationalized the entire thing. And when I saw how it was operationalized, I was like, that's it. Like, that's what we need. Like, we need to get more clear about what these values mean. And we have to be unrelenting in how we reward, hire, fire associated with these. And we need the operational components to be able to have our finger on the pulse, to be able to constantly have these things top of mind and not in the background.
So good, man. Well, you said a couple words there that I want to key in on. One of them was clarity. You've said that word several times, and getting clear beyond, well-intentioned but high concept words like courage. You wanted to get clear, and you also used another word. The word was value, but not in the values kind of sense. But you were actually talking about the value an individual can create for the sake of the company, something that you could actually leverage. Talk a little bit about what you've discovered in the last year around what you've gotten clear on, and how do you measure value when it comes to employees?
CTC's unfair advantage is we know that humans trade on trust. What if you could turn every customer interaction right at the point of decision making into a moment of trust building? That's exactly what Format does. AI-powered, seamless, personalized shopping experiences. Format does this with your full funnel solution. They make it as easy to build a full funnel as they do a single ad, leveraging artificial intelligence for a seamless, instant creation of a landing page that creates a personalized shopping experience. It actually lands for the customer like you know them. It actually paves the way for the very trust that we want to build in the marketplace. New product launches, seasonal change. There are these moments where you need customization on the fly and you don't have time to get under the hood and work this out. We have tools for that. And that tool is Format. Check out the link, reach out to them, tell them we sent you. But most importantly, look for the opportunities that they're going to create for your customers to build the very trust you're looking for.
Good question. I think what we've gotten more clear on, and again, it's not 100% clarity, but we're clearer than we were a year ago. And I alluded to it earlier, is we were expending a lot of energy doing things that we thought were, creating value. But when you start questioning that, like, well, what is that value? What part of that effort is creating it? Is it really producing what we think? What do we think it's producing? Right. That, I don't know if I'm answering your question, but like going through that exercise at the channel level, even at the employee level, and having open conversations with your leadership team about those roles, again, maybe disassociated from the actual person, but the actual role, that just gave us so much clarity because we've been able to pivot a little more quickly. We've moved resources around, and we're measuring better because before we weren't even measuring the right things. And so we kind of had to like map out the entire system and like, what is the system? What are the value creation points of that system, the inputs and the outputs? And that's essentially where you put KPIs, where what are these points in the system that you can't afford to mess up? That's a KPI.
Well, and it's at least, and it's more objective value at those places.
Yes.
Like, because if you can actually tie it directly to behavior and how that behavior contributes to revenue and decreasing cost, that's the easiest game to measure against, the easiest scoreboard
Yes.
that's out there.
And what's interesting, I'll say this last thing. I don't know if I even answered your question, but so we did that exercise kind of at the channel level and also the individual level. And what I thought was interesting is we were in this place where we were spinning our wheels, treading water, not quite understanding what we were supposed to do to kind of get through that growth friction. And all around, it was just getting that clarity, because the reason why we couldn't break through in some of these channels is that we didn't have a good enough understanding of what was actually creating the value there, or what part of it we weren't executing well on to produce a different outcome. And so it's kind of like Inception, but it's just like it was a problem at the highest level of the company all the way down to the individual channel level. And it has resulted in me being a better leader in that when things come up now, even a proposal like, oh, hey, we want to do this thing. I'm like, show me your assumptions on how this is creating value. And that kind of allows me and whoever we're working with to get to the root of it. And we make better decisions now, because if I don't get that kind of clarity on the front end, it's not happening.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about measuring things for a minute. So one of the things that we assert that you've installed is this key employee index thing, and the idea of actually looking at, certainly are people achieving their goals, but what are the lead indicators of behavior that point to that? Attitudinally, how do people show up, whether or not they bring drama or not enough energy, where they fit in the rule of 10. And all these things are kind of assertions that you've generously tried on for size. They work at CTC. Have they worked at Heart and Soil?
Yeah, I think I would give that an A+. I would give it an A+ in terms of working, but again, it doesn't mean that there's not
gaps.
There's not gaps. And
that's right.
What's interesting is the reason why I give it an A+ is because it has allowed us to make some personnel moves that we otherwise would have probably missed. And I'm not talking just from like the leadership level down. I'm even talking about the leadership team. And it has become very obvious to me when someone is actually putting in a full-fledged effort in trying to achieve like the highest performance that we can as a company, and kind of buying into the spirit of what we're trying to do, versus, someone who might not take that so seriously. So it's kind of helped us pivot at the leadership level. And then it's also the folks who have kind of embraced it. We've been able to, have conversations with employees, when we see like, 2 weeks in a row, the energy level was low here. Why is that? Okay, the manager's talking to this person, they're fixing it, right? We're essentially identifying issues that normally before this would have probably festered, and things kind of fester, and then they just build up into something that, like, if you just would have squashed it like a month ago, it wouldn't be a problem, and everything would be fine. And there's been a number of those circumstances that we've been able to iron out way more quickly.
Given all this talk about standard setting, you need to understand this. For your people to do their best work, they need the right tools for the job. For our work at CTC, we think a lot about forecasting and measurement and getting the numbers right. Bill.com does the same thing. Every dollar invested efficiently and effectively. What CTC does for the brands we get to work with, Bill.com does for us. Bill simplifies spend and expense numbers. They connect contribution and performance, and they make accountability crystal clear. At CTC, everyone loves Bill.com. Luke uses it with his team. Tony uses it with his team. Even Taylor uses it. Even Mickey, the guy who's making this video, uses Bill.com. The same should be true for you and your team. So whether you're an agency managing a distributed team or you're a brand looking to raise the standard, check out Bill for yourself. There's a link on screen. Book a demo. Tell them CTC sent you.
On the front end, did you think that we could measure these things? Like, were you skeptical at all going in? Like, come on, culture, really? You're going to measure that? And I'm really asking honestly, like, was that a surprise to you at all?
No, it wasn't. I think if you think creatively enough, you can measure just about anything. That's one component. But the thing that was surprising to me, well, It's not surprising. You still can't measure it unless everyone actively participates in it, with their most kind of.
Say more what you mean.
Well, it's like you're not really measuring your culture if your leadership team is treating this like a homework assignment, right?
Got
or
you.
if they're not being transparent about what's actually going on their team because they feel like they're protecting their team member, right? So it's like and this is like with anything, I guess, the measurement is only as good as the folks' ability to kind of buy in and
That's
in
right.
the spirit of what you're trying to do the best that they can. And that's where I kind of had a question mark into it. It's like, yeah, I know I can measure this, but like,
will we actually measure
it?
Right. Right.
And the good news to that is like, I'm in control of that, right? As a CEO of a company, I have some control and responsibility on whether or not people actively participate in this, because I have the autonomy and authority to be able to make a change if I need to. And that's kind of the hard stuff that I think leaders struggle with, but ultimately it's my fault if we can't measure it, if that makes sense.
Oh, it does. Well, it does if you're willing to take 100% responsibility, which you do. So it's funny. What's occurring to me as you're saying this is a kind of a funny question, but who would this not be for? Like, what are organizations out there that like, this is a terrible idea to take on some of these initiatives? Because I think this isn't for everybody. It really isn't.
No, it's really not it's not for everybody. I mean, gosh, it's a good question. I think there's a lot of organizations out there where they say one thing, but they're not really bought into what they're saying, right? The values are kind of on the wall, and we talk about them in a town hall, and like then everybody goes their merry way, but we don't really like to actually do the hard stuff that it takes to actually live by those. I'd say if you're one of those organizations where you just, you're okay with being okay. Like you don't, not everybody needs to want to drive world-class results. There's a lot of organizations that exist out there. I mean, average is average, right? It's common. If you, maybe not everybody identifies with that. I think most people would say, no, I want to be great. But like, I think if you hear stories of like how Tom Brady prepared for football games and what like the sacrifices he had to actually make to become great, he did a lot of boring stuff over and over again. He did a lot of hard stuff that other people weren't willing to do. And I think the same thing applies for business. So if you're not willing to put in the work and the effort, but you want to be great, then this might not be for you. But if you want to be great and you're willing to like get uncomfortable and like you want your team to get uncomfortable with you and you want to figure it out, then I think this is a great thing.
Talk a little bit about the benefits of being uncomfortable.
The benefits of being uncomfortable. I don't know. I always get kind of like woo-woo, but maybe not woo-woo. I think nothing in nature grows without friction. You even see it with trees, right? Like the tree needs sunlight to grow, and it will literally, if something's blocking it, it will go around and grow up, and the roots will go where the water is. And like, it's probably much easier if the, roots could just grab some water right there without having to like,
move around.
Yeah, move around. So I think just as a nature of principle, I mean, weightlifting is like one of the best analogies.
That's right.
Yeah, you don't grow muscle, you don't build a stronger body, you don't build a stronger mind unless you put yourself in uncomfortable positions. You need to put a little load on. And it doesn't mean that you need to put so much load that you break, but like over time, if you can compound and build the amount of load that you're putting on your system or in the workplace, to become a great leader, sometimes you have to force yourself into very uncomfortable things, even if you might not do a good job at it. And this is where early on in my experience as being a CEO, and I still do it sometimes, it's like it's this head game where you want to kind of, but I can recognize it now when I'm trying to avoid something just because I'm uncomfortable with it.
Yeah.
But in the beginning, I would let some things go way too long because it was easier not to deal with it. And it's funny because this stuff, you read books and you know, like, yes, I need a tackle problems head on right when they happen. And then when these little things happen, it's too easy to let it go. And then you're doing yourself a disservice, and you're not building the muscle to become better, and you don't level up.
The thing that occurs to me as you're saying all that is basic. I mean, in all of your answers, there's like a common thread through it, and that's to getting real about what you want. So if I'm an individual at an organization, getting real about what I want, am I really aligned with what we're doing here? Am I really willing to do the things to create value? Am I willing to transparently be seen as I actually am, not as I'd like you to appear as, so that you would like me? But that goes, I'm hearing you say, almost scaled all the way to the top of the org. Like, what do we really want to do here together? And wouldn't that be worth enough effort to measure for it and to align resources in that direction, so that we actually give ourselves a shot at excellence? Am I hearing you right?
No, you're hearing me, I think, spot on. And it's kind of a key differentiator that you helped me unlock this insight. But again, I've always had the thought process of like, yes, we don't grow unless we make ourselves uncomfortable, right? Like we don't, like, we want to do the hard shit. I've always had that mentality, but the key kind of mistake or like misstep that I made in growing Heart and Soil is I didn't bring enough challenge to the actual team. And I focused more of my energy, not intentionally, not even knowing what I was doing, on people's happiness and their comfortability in the role, and not as much emphasis on the actual performance and the output. And the interesting thing in it is, like, it's very easy to kid yourself that, like, okay, if I just make sure everyone's comfortable and everyone's happy, then we're going to have better results, and they're going to actually grow as people. The relationships are going to get better. The company is going to produce better. And I think that's a major flaw. And that's where I made the mistake in the system that we created. Everything became about us. We weren't really pushing each other to grow. We weren't really being critical about certain things that we were doing at the organizational level to add value to our customers' lives. And I recognized this about the same time I came to CTC and heard you, and I was struggling with this thing that I was noticing. I was walking around campus on a day-to-day basis. And whereas a year and a half prior, I'd walk around and I'd hear, oh my gosh, I was talking with this customer, Linda, and she couldn't get pregnant for 4 years, and then she did. Can you believe that? Like, conversations were like that. Or, hey, I'm dealing with this email challenge. What do you think? But at this point, I'm walking around campus and I'm hearing like things often like, oh, we need a third sauna. Oh, we need, like, why don't we get paid for going on? If we don't go on the tribe trip, why don't we get paid for it? I just started hearing all these things that were kind of like us centered, and little conversation about who we're serving. And I'm taking a long time answering this question, but that was kind of the key moment where I'm like, okay, I actually think that's the wrong place to focus on comfort and happiness. And we need to focus on performance and results, because if everyone's in the same mindset,
that's right,
then everyone grows. The company grows, the individuals grow, the relationships get better, we experience more together, and we're all successful together. Or we fail and we've learned a hell of a whole lot.
Yeah. Well, at the bottom line, at least you're all aligned in the same direction.
Yes.
So let me ask you this question, and this is our last question we'll go with today. But
cool.
If you're talking to somebody who's thinking about, to be clear, we only work with brands we only offer this service, this idea of helping around culture design with folks that we actually work with, brands that partner with CTC. But let's say you're talking to a handful of folks that were working with CTC and they were considering doing this, and you're the CEO to CEO. What do you say to a CEO about this thing that we're offering?
I probably approach it the same way I approach health advice. I don't have any interest in telling people what to do, but I do have a lot of people that come and say, hey, I'm struggling with this thing. What do you think? And I think that's how I would approach it with another CEO. people issues, if you want to call it that, or just performance on the people side, performance at the business line, it's not talked about a whole lot in the DTC space in e-com. You can find countless number of people that talk about marketing tactics and strategies and everything, but there's this giant gap in how to build a high performing organization. And I think for those that are really bound and determined to build the best possible business they can, and they're serious about that, I would tell another CEO, like, you need to have an operational system, like an operating system for your business that is driving the types of outcomes that you want to see. And I feel like CTC has done that great. You've done that great. Like, you gave us this blueprint that we could just kind of put, we didn't change our values. We didn't change like the DNA of who we are, but you gave us this awesome operating system and helped us like consider certain things and kind of put this into practice and motion to where things don't get lost. We have our eye on the ball all the time. I mean, we're revisiting this stuff on a weekly basis. So anyways, that's what I would tell somebody.
Can I ask Dean a question?
Yeah.
So we're really breaking the fourth wall here.
I love it.
So Heart and Soil has an ancestral vibe for sure. Even when I went out to dripping, you could feel it a little bit. And you guys had that circle that met in the mornings. But I've been in so many of those circles where it feels like it's kumbaya, and you guys actually pulled it off. It feels like a lot of other brands try and they miss, but you guys actually nailed it.
The reason why that works is because, one, we've been doing it since the very first week that we were in business, but that doesn't mean anything. It's just like established kind of routine. But the reason why you can come from the outside and sit in that circle and it doesn't feel fake, it's because it's not. It's because every single person here that we hire actually cares about our customers. And they're like, when we go around and share our wins and read the customer review at the end of the meeting, people genuinely care about each other and about the customer story. And it's never, 5 years in, it's not, that meeting has never felt fake to me, which is unique, I think, in a lot of ways, because I've been in some work environments where like you do this little kumbaya thing or whatever, but it's not like, you know, it's not as meaningful, or it doesn't feel that way. But everyone's bought into that. That's the thing that I don't have trouble buying people into, right? Like, people do, like, everyone here cares about our customers, they care about our products, they live the lifestyle. All of that isn't a problem, which is sometimes it's really hard stuff for a company to get kind of their DNA like rooted in what they actually do. The thing that there's not always buy-in in is this performance piece. And I've always said, like, they're two sides of the coin, but when they're complementary, and if you get both of these things together at level 100, you're totally unstoppable.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I can see how it would be deceiving. Like, oh, they have so much alignment with the product and the people, and it all seems so great, but they actually don't aspire to greatness in the work. Yes. How there can be, it can feel like, wait, I thought you were one of us, but it was kind of your half of us. You're missing the part that actually gets us to the.
It's actually something I struggled with early on, or I'd say the company struggled with it. It was before maybe a year or so before we approached you, I was noticing kind of this thing where every time we talk about revenue or conversion rate, or it almost looked like you were being looked at by somebody on the team like you were a used watch salesman. Like, wait a second, we're counting revenue because like we care about our mission and we don't want to be too salesy, or like, so we had this perception on, especially our frontline teams, that sales was bad, that persuasion was bad, that like using the tools in that kind of way was bad. And so I had to figure out, how do I kind of balance these two things? Because it is like, I don't disagree with them in a lot of ways. Like, if used the wrong way, or like persuasion tactics used in the wrong way, like, yes, it can be very, very bad, but like, we believe in what we're doing. We believe in the product.
Yeah, that's right.
We're not out to like, we're not trying to like pull the wool over somebody's eyes, right? Like, we're trying to actually help. And so anyways, long story short, what I did was I moved our frontline teams under the marketing umbrella. So they essentially were embedded in this vocabulary and ecosystem that cares about conversion and funnels and things of that nature. And had a lot of conversations with leaders about like, hey, we have this like genuine caring piece and we know about our product like nobody else, but like we have to develop mastery in our roles as business people, as marketers, as, customer support. And when those things happen together, then we can outcompete with anybody. But if we're in this touchy-feely place and we're going to like ignore the tools of the trade because we're scared of them, that's not going to do anybody any good.
Dean, I love working with you, man. I love where you're headed. It's funny. I had one other candid thought that I wanted to ask you about that.
Yeah.
I said that was the last question, but this is more of a curiosity question. Mm-hmm. Do you think companies that let's say they have just a great product, it's selling itself, you don't really have to work really hard. Do you think that contributes at all to folks that maybe do take their eye off the ball when it comes to the people side of the equation, the culture side of the equation?
100%. So you're asking me a company that just has like people are attracted to it. They buy. They don't have a lot of friction in the process.
Whether they have a great culture or not, they're selling their wares.
Yeah.
And there's revenue. Everyone gets paid. Everything's fine. Like, do you think that contributes to that kind of malaise?
100%. Yeah. And I think it's not a problem until it's a problem. And when it's a problem, it's a big problem. And that's what we dealt with. We were, high organic growth, like shot out of a cannon. We could probably have a 6-year-old write an email and it'd probably have 70% open rate and 6%, purchase rate at the time. I mean, everything was working. The good news in that is it's great. It feels good when that's happening. But if you're not dialed in on trying to seek clarity in your performance, then when performance goes wrong, you have no idea what to do. And it's going to take you a very, very long time to get things back on track. And not only that, if you're not paying attention to the people side of the business, you're going to have some people that just jump off the ship. Some people that, just sit there and don't know what to do. And it could be your captain, right? Like you could be needing to make a move very quickly. And if you're not training for that and building that muscle in the good times, then you're not going to do very well in the bad times. So anyway, that'd be my answer for that.
Awesome. Dean, thank you, man.
Yep.
So appreciate you.
You too, Dane. Thank you so much.
All right,
Thanks for having me.
We'll talk to you soon.